Mr. Darling, I have a question for you. I arrived in this country in 1996 from South Africa. In all the years that I've been here, I've always lived under a Labour government. And there's something I don't understand. You had 10 years of the most unbelievable growth that the world has ever experienced. And yet, you continue to blame the Conservatives for what is happening now. You continue to bash the banker for what is happening now. But what you fail to admit is the amount of taxes the government earned from just about every person sitting at this table, in the bonuses that we paid to the government, in the taxes that our banks paid to the government, and yet you sit there and you continuously blame everyone else but yourselves for what you did. Why can't you just admit to all of us, 150 people sitting around here, that you messed up?
Do you do that
Why
in the book?
can't you, for one, stand up and say, you know what? I made a mistake. I made a mistake, and you know what? It's time for me to make amends. And just say, it's time to make things right. And I'm not saying the Conservative government...
Okay, thank you. And within the comment, but what I want to know, which I think is critical, do you address this good and fair question? Do you address this in your book?
Let me try and reply to you, though from the tone of what you're saying, I probably won't have much success. Firstly, at no time have I said this evening or any other time that what happened over the last 3 years was all the fault of the Conservatives. I've never said that. It'd be absolutely ludicrous to claim that. And the difference I have at the moment is in their prescription of what they're doing going forward. But if you look at what happened in the last three years, I have said time and time again, when I was Chancellor, and since then, mistakes were made in relation to the regulatory system, there were mistakes made by central banks, and there were mistakes made by central governments, ours included. I've always been clear about that, just as you would have to accept, and I'm sure you do, being a fair and reasonable individual, that there were colossal failures in the boardrooms of some of these banks amongst people who clearly did not know what they were doing, didn't understand the risks they've taken on. But I will more than happily let you come back, but let me just answer your points. Secondly, just hold on a minute and let me try and deal with the second point you made. Secondly, I have on many, many occasions said that whilst there are some things, for example, as I've mentioned, failures in the boardrooms in banks, I have never been one to go around saying it's all the fault of the bankers. Because that is simplistic. It would be wrong to say that that is the case, and I've never actually done it. And indeed, I lost count of the number of times when I've sat in television studios having to defend bankers and various other people, because I think we do need to take a balanced view of what I've said in relation to this industry. Yes, mistakes were made in just about every part of the area you choose to look at. But I certainly, at any time, have I said it was all the fault of the bankers or all the fault of the Conservatives. I just simply haven't said that. And if you think I'm wrong about that, I'd be interested to know if you can give me chapter and verse where I actually said it. I think it is quite pointless to do that. What I think is more constructive is to learn from the mistakes that have been made, and not just in this country, because if it was just this country, you might have a point. In other countries, we've had similar problems as well. The third thing you raised, I think, was in relation to the growth and, by implication, the spending. There was a political consensus in this country to a large extent for much of the 10 years after 1997 that part of our infrastructure, like education, like the health service, like transport, railways in particular, had suffered from decades, our governments, Tory governments, both of them included, of underinvestment. And there was almost a political consensus that more money needed to be spent on that. Now, I hope my reply has been balanced and reasonable. I haven't the slightest doubt that you don't agree with a word of what I've had to say, but I just wanted to put you right on the three accusations you made.
We're going to go on on to another question, but I want to say, besides, I hope this is addressed in your book.
Well, it will be now. Yeah. Thanks. I'll put another chapter in.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Okay. I've had a number of heated interviews saying that Minister Lagarde possibly shouldn't be chosen to run the IMF. Do you have an opinion on that?
Well, I don't think there's any reason why she should not be the next managing director. I mean, I know Christine. I know Guston Carstens as well. I've obviously, because Christine is the minister and just across the channel, I work with her, more closely. I think for the good of the IMF, to have gone through at least the motions of an open contest would have been quite a good thing. Because I don't think you should assume that it automatically goes to a European, like the World Bank automatically goes to America. That said, there only appears to be two candidates in the frame, and there seems to be, certainly a head of steam building up behind Christine. In many ways, what would be nice also to hear from both candidates, Mr. Carstens, Madame Lagarde, is what they would actually do with the IMF, because the IMF is at the moment very much seen as a sort of banker of last resort, whereas I think the IMF has a greater role in sometimes helping countries transition through things. If we reduce the stigma, so going to the IMF needn't necessarily be seen to be, a sign that you're actually in different straits. Also, in relation to the IMF's surveillance role, the early warning mechanisms, and so on, I think it would be quite useful for us to spend some time working out what we want the IMF to actually do, not so much who we want to actually run it.
So many of us in the room, we go back and forth between real GDP, nominal GDP analysis, short-term rates, et cetera. Which do you look at more, a nominal environment, or do you inflation adjust?
Well, I think you have to inflation adjust. But you look at a whole range of of figures. I don't focus on any one thing, and a lot of actually economic management. And some of the lower people in here who may think that everything is driven off numbers. Intuition sometimes can get you quite a long way. Your feel for things as to what you think's happening. My feel is I think we're on the edge, frankly. We've managed to get through the acute crisis, but after, when the credit systems freeze and sometimes break down, it is always going to take you a lot longer to come out. I just don't think that Europe in general, and to some extent in this country, we fully grasp the scale of the challenges that we face over the next 10, 20, 30 years. And this is where I differ from the present government. I do think government's going to have to play a role, partly through what it's doing fiscally, but partly also in terms of our infrastructure and so on, changes that need to be made in Europe and the labour market and so on. Unless we make those changes, I think we should be very wary. And anyone who is the parent of children or grandchildren should be very wary. We're in a very delicate position at the moment, and I'm not sure people have really woken up to that.